Recently, I went through a training program to be able to run a marathon. I'm not going to be able to run the marathon because I'm going to be out of town that weekend, but I trained. The first day I ran, and this program was wonderful. I felt myself looking around as I was running, feeling good, noticing the blue sky and the cool breeze on my face, the birds chirping. It was wonderful. I was so excited to be doing something to get healthy and to get into shape. It didn't take very long for that to change. Around week 2 or 3 of 16, I wanted to quit. Training got hard. The long runs got longer, and my patience and my endurance seemed to be shrinking. But I kept at it. There were great runs, there were terrible runs, there were all kinds of runs in between. But the important thing was that I stayed faithful to the training program. When it was hard, when it was easy, when I thought I didn't have time, when maybe I didn't have time, I stayed faithful. If I missed a run, and I did miss a few, I either tried to make it up on another run during the week, or I simply got to the next day that I had to run and did that one. I didn't let my shortcomings, my failures, force me to quit. This weekend we celebrate the first Sunday of Lent. Right, Ash Wednesday is still fresh in our minds because it was just a few days ago. And maybe we've gotten out of the gates in this Lenten journey quickly and we're thinking that Lent is just the best thing ever. Right? Penance has never felt so good. It's the first week and we're doing well. Hopefully we've picked penances that focus on an area of our life that we need to work on. Hopefully we've just picked penances, right? And if we thought and prayed about the penances that we're taking up, it probably feels good to give up something that we know we need to work on. It probably feels good to take some steps to improve our spiritual life. And so if Lent is going well in these first few days, good. It's great news. But that might change. At some point, our penances will probably get very difficult. At some point, we'll probably be tempted to cheat if we haven't gotten there already. We may be even tempted to give up. A similar thing happened to Jesus in the gospel today. We hear today in the passage, a passage that comes right after Jesus' baptism. The beginning of his public ministry. Right at the baptism, John baptizes him in the Jordan, and when he comes up, the Spirit descends upon him in the form of a dove. Right, we can imagine how wonderful of a scene that was. Jesus has been, in a sense, cooped up for 30 years, right, just itching to start his ministry. Right, chomping at the bit to get after what the Father has sent him to do. And finally, with the start of his public ministry at his baptism, he's able to get to work. He's able to start on that path that's ultimately going to lead to his death and resurrection. So the stage is set and he's ready to go. But right after this powerful, this beautiful scene, what happens? Jesus is led into the desert by the same Spirit that descended upon him at his baptism to be tempted by the devil. Sounds like a letdown. It might seem a bit strange that right after such an amazing event, right after the setting off on his fulfilling his mission given to him by the Father, that the Spirit would lead him to be tempted. Seems strange, but it should in some ways give us hope. The beginning of Lent signifies for all of us, right, a chance at a new beginning. Lent is a time when we commit to changing our lives. Lent is a time when we commit to following Jesus more closely. Lent is ultimately a time where we recommit ourselves to being Christians. Right, and we see this symbolized in the fact that at the Easter Vigil, we're all going to renew our baptismal promises. Right, we're preparing to renew ourselves to being followers of Christ. And so today's gospel reminds us that just because we're committed to following Christ, just because we've entered into this journey, it doesn't mean that things are going to be easy. It actually means the opposite. We're going to be tempted. Right? We're going to struggle. It's precisely because we're Christians that we're going to be tempted. Right? The more that we follow Jesus, the more we try, the more the devil is going to try to pull us away from it. The more he's going to try to distract us. The more we're doing the will of the Father, the more those temptations are going to come, because the devil doesn't want us to follow God. He wants to mess us up. In today's gospel, we hear three of the most forceful words that we hear from Jesus in the scriptures. Get away, Satan. No questioning what he's saying here. Right? Jesus didn't try to negotiate with the devil. He doesn't sit there and weigh his options. Right? He's not thinking to himself, well, my Father sent me on this mission and he sort of promised that I'd get this. But the devil's offering some pretty enticing things, right? What's more appealing? No. He immediately shunned each temptation that the devil put to him. And so this is how we should deal with temptations. Get away, Satan. Right? We don't sit there and think about it. We don't play with the temptations. We just get rid of it. And so this has to come into play practically in our lives. Right? If you gave up sweets for Lent, it's probably not going to be a good idea to leave a box of Russell Stover candies on the counter. It's fresh in my mind because someone gave us some the day before Lent started. Right? Get them out of there. Don't play with the temptation. Get rid of it. If you gave up TV, it's probably not a good idea to sit in front of the TV and think about what you should do instead of watching TV. Right? Do something else. Put the TV in another room. Put it in a closet. Hide the remote. Do something to where that temptation is not there. If you're trying to become pure, then don't put yourself in compromising situations where you're going to be tempted to fall in purity. Get rid of the temptation. If you're trying to pray in the morning, it might not be a good idea to stay up till midnight. It'd be real easy to hit the snooze button if you do that. Right? Set yourself up for success. Get rid of the temptations that are going to cause you to fall in the things that you are trying to work on. We shouldn't be discouraged when we're tempted, but we also shouldn't entertain those temptations. Right? Get rid of them. Just as Jesus is baptized to give us a model to follow, he also gives us a model to follow when dealing with temptations. He doesn't play around with them. I have to admit that when I was on that run one Saturday or Sunday afternoon, I don't remember, maybe it was Saturday, and I realized that I was going to be out of town the day that the marathon was that I was training for, I was really tempted to quit. And I would be lying to you if I said that I didn't have the thought to stop. It was right by Don's on Johnson Street. I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't have the thought to stop and grab an old fashioned and call my mom to come pick me up. Right? But I didn't do that. As soon as I caught myself thinking those thoughts about giving up, I tried to change. Right? I got rid of them. I thought back to the good runs that I'd had. How far I'd come since I'd started the training. Thought about the good changes that I was noticing in my life, right? That I had more energy, was excited to wake up in the morning. I'd remind myself that people had done far more demanding things that I was doing at the moment, and they lived, even though I felt like I wanted to die sometimes. I was watching Band of Brothers at the time. I thought about those guys, sitting in the snow in Bastogne, having to break ice to shave, and say, okay, I think I can go a couple more steps. And it wasn't going to kill me. And I realized if I could get through just a couple more steps, and if I focused on that, then eventually those couple of steps would turn into a mile. Unfortunately, it turned into another mile and another mile, but eventually I'd finish the run, and I'd feel great. And it's the same with Lent. When we find ourselves toying with the idea of giving up, get rid of those thoughts immediately. Think about all that Christ endured. The temptations in the desert that we hear about today. Being abandoned by all of those he loved. The scourging at the pillar. The humiliation of the cross. Think of all of those things that Christ endured. And realize that you can get through whatever temptation you are experiencing at that moment. Because someone else has gone through far worse. But if you do fall, whether it's a little fall or a big fall, don't get discouraged, and certainly don't quit. Try to make up for the fall if it's possible. If it's not possible, tell Jesus you love him, ask him to help you in the future, and get on with it. Try better next time. Because in the end, no matter how many times we might fall to temptation, the only way that we can truly fail during Lent, the only way that we can truly fail in our spiritual life is to simply give up. So if we find ourselves tempted, we should follow the example of Jesus. Don't toy around with the temptation. Don't weigh our options. Simply, firmly, courageously, and trusting in God's grace, say, "Get away, Satan."